Welcome to It's a Woman's World, a show which discusses any and all topics under the sun from a woman's point of view. Hosted today by Alli Naithani.
Welcome to the show. Let's get started by introducing our full table today. So I'd like to introduce Naava Johnson.
Hey, what's up?
Hi. Olivia Wolf.
Hi.
Nadia Giordana.
Happy to be here.
Great to have you. Junita Cathey.
Hello.
And Dr. Susan Strauss.
Hello.
Hello. Wow. We're going to start off by all of you recently got a deeper dive or a deeper look into your ethnicity using a DNA sample. So I am really excited to hear your thoughts on the process and what you learned from that. But before we get to that, Naava is going to tell us about an art exhibit that she recently attended, and this was in New York, and it was about from the time period of the 60s and the Civil Rights Act of 1964.
Right.
All right.
So my brother lives in New York, so I was able to make a trip to New York, and I went to this beautiful museum called Brooklyn Museum, and I went to an exhibit there that was shown in July, and it was called Art and Civil Rights in the 60s.
Ooh.
So it was the art was made during the Civil Rights Act of 1964, where there was social and cultural upheaval as people tried to bridge together the racial tension and the different races, and also to end discrimination. A lot of the artists expressed themselves through the art, and they expressed their experience of inequality, conflict, and empowerment. One art that really stood out to me was a canvas by the artist named Barclay Hendricks, and the canvas was called Lottie Mama, and it represents the Black is Beautiful mantra, where it shows a African American woman wearing her hair in her natural state, an afro, and the canvas is outlined in a gold leaf, so she's shining in the canvas. Yeah, and the canvas is very important, even still today, because as Black women, or minority women, Black women, we still struggle to. It's important to emphasize that Black is beautiful, because it's not always represented that way in the media, and as Black women we sometimes struggle with that. And I especially like the canvas because it shows her in her natural hair state, which is very powerful, because like Black hair, it's important to note that it is beautiful too, even though it's not always represented in the media. So it was a great exhibit.
Are any of those art pieces online that we could access?
Yes.
Okay, I'd like that.
You can definitely go check it out.
Sounds very moving. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was moving. It was
It was
nice.
great to see your passion, huh? As Naava talked about
Yes,
that.
that's
and,
right.
And what really astounds me is from that moved you, and that was from the 1960s, and
Yeah.
what a time that was,
Right.
and how much today that impacted you.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah,
All
that's right.
right.
Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
for
you.
sharing that.
Thank you.
All right. Well, as I said earlier, you all recently submitted a DNA sample, and so tell us about the process of this first. How did you go about doing this?
We had to spit.
Yeah, that's what I had to
Yep, we had to spit into basically a test tube.
Okay.
And you didn't need much, but I tell you, it took a while to get enough in
inch in that tube, yeah.
and spit it in, and then you send it in, and they do the DNA. I had an interesting experience because I sent mine in and I got feedback saying we don't have enough DNA on your spit, which I thought, So resubmitted, and they said we still don't have enough DNA. You can't submit anymore. So I went to a different vendor and sent that in and got my results.
So the basis of this is you just provide the spit, and
Right.
through that spit sample that you send,
Yep.
they're able to determine aspects of your DNA, your
Right.
history, and your specifically with this your ethnicity.
Yes.
Okay. So tell us about what was this like? Did anything surprise you? Was it what you already knew?
I had one interesting surprise is there's been a long going discussion between my mother and her sister about how Italian or not we are. And my aunt insists that it's primarily Italian on that side of the family because way back, the borders changed. That's the whole point.
Sure.
In this part of Italy and Yugoslavia, the borders would change. As it turns out, my mother was right. We're Slovene, not Italian. There's very little Italian that showed up, but Eastern European, which is where Slovenia is, and Romania and Austria. That was the big one in the DNA.
So that confirms.
That confirmed it.
I found one thing. I have a second cousin who has done genealogy and has traced it back almost 200 years and wrote a book on some of my ancestors. And they came from Norway and Sweden, and just on one part of the family. And yet when I looked at my results for Scandinavia, it says less than 1% for me, which surprised me. Now, I also have my mom's and my daughter's here. And now my mother for Scandinavian was 11%, and my daughter was 27%. But her dad's last name was Olson, so I'm assuming she got a couple more genes from that side of the family than just ours. So that surprised me that I was that low, considering the genealogy that had been done by my cousin.
Okay. What about you, Olivia?
Well, it turns out that I'm 100% East Asian / Native American, which I thought was actually kind of boring at first. And then I realized that like everyone else has like quite a conglomeration of like backgrounds. And so then it further split it into like 97% Chinese, and then there were like minor like 2% just kind of general Southeast Asian, South Asia, and other things along those lines.
Okay, great.
It's fascinating that they split that up even deeper, so
Yes.
that probably
Yeah.
helped, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, and they did, I think for those of us that were European, wasn't yours split up?
Yes, because our family did a lot of genealogy also, and that other piece, the 29% Great Britain, fit right into the work my grandmother had done all of her
Okay.
life, because that went deeply through Great Britain and names and people there, so that completely fit into what they said.
Now, and I found that the one vendor for my mom and my daughter got into it more than the vendor that I ended up using in terms of showing how much French, how much German, how much Finnish, and I didn't get quite that same degree.
So you got a little variation
It
between
did.
two vendors.
We
Okay.
did, and you have the same vendor that I did, right?
Yes.
Yeah, so what was yours?
This was actually a very interesting process for me. As a Black woman living in this country, you know, and if you think about my ancestors here going from being called colored to being, you know, Negro to African, African American, Black American, all, because nobody really knows what to call us, and there's this disconnection from where our roots are and then how a lot of African Americans are brought to this country. And so then to be able to go through this process, and 88% of my DNA is of African descent, and I'm 41 years old, and you know, born and raised in this country, but it gave me a sense of identity. Like, I mean, yes, they call us African American, but there's just so much, even now as a 41-year-old female, there's still a lot of residue from my ancestors not having a choice to come here, even though people still think that slavery exists in our history books, but not in the lives of those of us that live today. But this was probably the first time that I really had a sense of identity. Yes, I know I'm a Black woman, but to be able to break it down and be able to connect, 25% of my African heritage is Ghanaian. And then there's,
That's nice.
That
to
was
know.
nice.
they broke it down, 22% Cameroon, and then 16% Nigerian. It just gave me a sense of pride that I
bet.
never had as being a descendant of slaves in this country. Because it was, you know, it's just, there's so many things that we were called and so many ways that we were treated and who we were as a people. To be able to identify and connect with something so powerful was very moving for me.
Did your family have any way of doing genealogy in the same way as I'm talking about? And did they know about those areas of Africa? Or is this complete new news, so that makes it so valuable?
No one's done a full genetic study. However, when even the last name Flowers, which is my father's last name, how that's not a last name that traveled from Africa. That last name, which happened with a lot of slaves in this country, you ended up taking on the last name of the slave owner of the property that you were a part of. So Flowers is not a last name that I can trace back to Africa. So there hadn't been a full genetic study done.
Wow, Junita, I have to say, as you
Yeah.
said that was really moving.
Yeah.
You know,
It
I didn't realize some of those things that you brought up. That's
Yeah.
pretty incredible.
It actually makes me sometimes want to cry. I mean, it is.
I was going to
had,
ask you,
know,
if it felt like you were going to cry. It's like your essence. It's like your soul.
It's a sense of identity. Again, you know that, I know who my parents are. I know who my siblings are. You know that. But to be able to take who I am and who we are beyond the story that exists in this country for a lot of Black women, Black men, African American families, and to connect it to a land that's so full and rich of history and
Yes.
pride, just really gave me even a stronger sense of who I am.
Well, and
I
even
bet.
maybe feel that pull towards that part of Africa that you now know
Yeah.
where your people came from or part of your people. Yeah, how exciting to even when you see something on TV or you read a book.
Yes,
It's just,
yes.
it's a pull, it's a gravitational
yes.
thing.
Right.
More about those
Right.
Yeah.
countries.
Well, Naava, what about you?
Yeah, so, okay, originally I was like, I already know what I am. Like, I don't need to do this test. But it was interesting to find I did have a shocker in the results. Not that big of a shocker. Well, I am biracial. My mom is Ugandan, and my dad says he is Swedish and Finnish. He is Swedish and Finnish. But, yeah, he is Swedish and Finnish. But, so, it was determined that I was half European and half African. But, so Uganda is in the east side of Africa, but it turns out that a lot of where my mom is from is actually from West Africa. So that was kind of a shocker for me. So her ancestors are so even though Uganda's on the east side, we have a lot of west side ties, which is interesting. I always just thought, East African.
So what, did she say anything about that then? Did you tell her?
Yeah. Oh, actually, I told my dad this morning, and he was like, "Oh, really? Yeah, I'm gonna tell my mom." Yeah, I should tell her. I'll tell her today.
Yeah.
So it's just, yeah. So it's just interesting, even, yeah, in the same country,
Yeah.
everyone's tied. And, yeah. So actually, that was my shocker. So not that big of a shocker, but, yeah, I just thought, yeah, that's...
So the impact of going through this study, now, Junita, you told us really how kind of profoundly that moved you and gave you some insight. Anybody else? Anything deeper that you realized or?
I thought it was interesting to find out, and we've read it, but to actually see it, that we got that Neanderthal element in us,
Right.
And when we say Neanderthal, what do we mean by that?
Yeah, what do they mean by that?
Well, there's two different, and I'm no expert on this,
Yeah.
but I think there's two different ancestors, if you will,
Sure.
going back to that era, and Neanderthal was one. And it's just in the evolution of how we became human, and that a Neanderthal, I'm so not the expert, I hate to even say it, but it's just one of the steps that,
So Neanderthal were part of early human history then, not a separate strain that died off, which I think we hear about. I don't know about Cro-Magnon or any of those others. It's a name I've heard, but Neanderthal comes up in these. So that means that they're a part of who we are in the beginning?
well, let me show you. My mom, for example, was 2.8%, and it said Neanderthals have heavy eyebrow ridge, long, low, bigger skull, prominent nose with developed nasal chambers for cold air protection. They compared that to modern humans, which is a higher brow, narrower shoulders, and slightly taller. So I
You would think shorter. That's just a preconception.
it shows
but
it as
yeah.
being shorter
Yeah.
here a little bit. So it says, so what, I'm a caveman? And it says, actually, yes. But that has little to do with the percentage of Neanderthal DNA in your genome. So it says our perception of Neanderthals as big oafs is clouded by our own notion of superiority in pop culture caricatures. How we are different and why modern humans survived and Neanderthals did not is still a mystery.
Interesting. Well,
Very interesting.
Now, the one vendor here, you can actually get a T-shirt that shows the percentage of your Neanderthal and wear it.
oh, okay. Maybe with a definition too, right along it. sort of
Would help, yes.
Well, I have to say, this brought me back to my grade school days, because we would go, one time when it was St. Patrick's Day, the teacher asked the question, let's talk about the percentage of Irish we are. And so as I was hearing you, I just wanted to say that I was going back to my second grade day, where I thought perhaps that I was some percentage of Irish, and being from Indian descent, the teacher said, no, you're not. And
But you don't even know you could be.
And so that's where I was saying, maybe I should, as the person at the table who hasn't taken the test, maybe I will find out
Yes.
and see if I actually was right. I think I gave being 7 years old, I think I said something like, I must be like 55% Irish. I'm going to venture to say I'm probably not that high. But if I take this test, so I'm kind of curious now after listening to your experiences. So, Olivia, would you recommend this to people? You think it's a good thing to do?
I think it's developing, and for me, I personally didn't find anything that I found very shocking or revealing. It basically told me that I'm Asian, and two things that I was really excited about was possibly getting to know some of my medical history and also family connections, because I'm adopted and those would be useful tools for me.
Yeah.
But obviously, most likely, like, my family hasn't actually done this test, and so most of my connections are like 4th, 5th, 6th cousins. And because of some legal issues, they actually can't put health information on the website at the moment. But who knows what'll happen in the future with this.
My daughter did it before they outlined the health information, so she got a bunch of health information on hers.
Oh, neat.
Yeah.
I would think for some people that would be very important.
I like that.
They'd want to know their health history.
They actually
Or at
asked me a
least
ton
optional.
of questions. Yeah, they asked me a ton of questions because they were asking if I would want to be part of a survey or research.
Oh, really?
Did you guys get that for 23andMe? Yeah.
No.
So I did answer a bunch of questions. But yeah, I was also really fascinated by my different DNA of relatives. Like, I keep on getting emails, oh, you have a new cousin. So I actually have like 592 distant cousins, 371 fourth cousins, and 24 second and third cousins.
See,
my
and
goodness.
your vendor does that. The one, have you gotten any emails about that? I haven't either. And our vendor has not done that. I think you've got a good deal with your vendor.
Okay, so the message out there is there are different vendors out there, and you might get different things.
Do your
so
research,
Research
sure.
it, huh?
You use a different vendor, correct?
Yes, the three of
'Cause
us
I
did.
think that one's awesome because they just told me, like, in general where my African countries were. They didn't say the specific countries. So they told you
yeah.
specific. So that might be one that I want to check out.
Might
this
be worthwhile to do both.
Well,
Right,
now
yeah,
that's interesting
yeah.
because now they did say, now for European,
Yeah.
your vendor and my vendor did identify European.
Yep.
For we did get that, so it's
Yeah.
surprising you
So I
didn't
have-
get your African
I have
and you did.
I have the European countries, but I don't have.
Yeah.
It just says in general where
Well,
the
that
African
would have
countries-
been nice to have gotten that information.
Yeah, I want to know where in
But
West
I have
Africa.
7% Scandinavia, so that means I'm really a Minnesotan.
Oh, 7%, yeah, you do,
That's
okay.
a Minnesota piece.
Yeah,
Yeah.
shoot, you got more than I do.
Thank you for sharing your experience. This was really interesting, and collectively, it looks like you're glad you did it.
Yes,
Definitely.
yes,
Okay.
yes.
Pretty
I
interesting
I will
experiences.
add one other thing
Yeah.
too, that in the vendor that I went to, they also give you a lot of, now this, I'll cover this because it identifies the vendor, but there's a whole white paper that you get on ethnicity estimate white paper. And they bring you through all of the studies and how they do it and so on. So it gets more into the science of it, which I was kind of interested in.
Sure.
But really, I was disappointed.
I'd like to read about the science of it, yeah.
Yeah,
That
you
would've
can
been
get that,
nice.
you can get it online.
Good, good.
But it didn't give us, I don't think, the three of us, from what I'm hearing you say too, as much information, I think, as what you all got, what my sister and my mom got.
See, and you have, because I think because you have other things to compare it to, then it can either make it, like, it was a good
Yes.
experience or not. With this, I think it's a good starting point. And it would be then if you wanted to find more or,
Yes.
dig deeper, you now have a starting place. And then you
I
can kind of go
agree.
from there and start making connections.
Yeah. Yeah, I was anxious to see how my mom and my daughter came out, but
All right. Well, good stuff. All right. Well, stay with us. Next, we're going to switch our focus to Italy because we're going into the studio kitchen and we're going to cook up some pesto. Well, I'm so excited to be at the studio kitchen. And Junita and Bonnie, thank you for being with me today.
I'm delighted.
Yes.
I'm hungry.
And me too. And I'm so excited because we are here and we're going to make a pesto. From Bonnie's garden we've got.
My basil.
Yay!
I brought it.
And
It
look
smells
at
so
that.
I picked it this morning in the garden.
Oh, how wonderful. It's just that time of year and it's from your garden and doesn't it like you just said, it smells amazing.
Yes.
Well,
Best smell in the studio.
yeah.
Not that, I mean,
No.
everybody smells good here.
Right.
The
but
basil
this
smells
is-
better.
This is getting the cake, right? And we were talking earlier, but we were saying pesto for people that may not know. Do you want to talk about what is pesto?
Well, sure, it's a traditional Italian, kind of a garnish, enhancement that
Yes.
goes on often pasta, but can go on meat or lots of other things.
Yeah.
And it's a plant. Basil is the traditional plant, although you can make pesto out of a lot of plants
Sure.
that have a lot of flavor. It's an aromatic oil. And so when you chop it up and you add other good things like nuts and cheese and
Yes.
olive oil,
Yes.
becomes wonderful.
And hopefully we're going to create wonderful,
Right,
So in our blender or our food processor, we've got 2 cups of fresh basil from Bonnie's garden. We're already in here. And to that, we've got 2 garlic cloves right here. And before I put it in a food processor, which we're about to do, and as Bonnie said, we're simply taking ingredients and blending them up in this food processor. So do you both like garlic? Are you garlic fans?
Oh my gosh, I love garlic.
I love garlic.
Yeah. And you
Plus,
can,
it's the herbal medicine of the century because it's got
Oh, it sure
antibiotic
is.
properties. So
yes, it does.
if you're
And-
feeling a little sick, eat more garlic.
And I'd asked Bonnie before we started taping, should we do 1 clove or 2 of these big cloves? And you said.
I said do 2 because I
do
love
2.
garlic.
Okay. So, and I always, like I said, try to help out the food processor a little bit by cutting up the garlic. So we've got the garlic in. And then next to that, we're going to add in a little bit of salt. And add salt as you like to your preference. And then some fresh cracked pepper here. And now, one thing that I have here is some ground almonds. And so, to traditional pesto, I've read recipes which say you can add either pine nuts or walnuts or almonds. So, I'm going to add in here about a half a cup of almonds. And do you ever roast your almonds before you put them in
Yes,
things? Yeah.
yes. It really does like just amp up the flavor a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I did that. I just quickly, about 350, I roasted them until, roasting them means just till you see that smell come out or that the color in the almond change, and then I ground them up. So I've got that in there, and now
Can I ask how
Yeah.
much almonds you did, or how
I
much
did a half a cup, or a 4th cup, I'm sorry,
of
excuse
the
me.
raw almonds? or
Raw
before you?
almonds,
Okay.
a 4th cup of the raw almonds. I roasted them, put them in an oven, and then just ground them up.
Okay,
That's
great.
it, yep. And then we've got some Parmesan cheese over here. So they say to do about a half cup of this too. So I'm gonna kind of wing this because I love the Parmesan cheese. Do you like the Parmesan as well?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's like everything you're putting in there has so much flavor, you know, when
Yeah.
you even eat them separately.
Just like your cookies.
Yeah. Yes.
I want you to make a pesto cookie for me.
Wonderful cookies. So we're gonna put this on and just kind of let it all mix together for just a second. So we're gonna make some noise. Blend that, give it a first good blend together. And then next we're gonna add some olive oil. So Junita, would you mind pouring, we've got a half cup there, and Junita will pour a half cup, and this is just your traditional olive oil.
There you go.
Thank you. And we're gonna run the food processor again and drizzle this in, and then we're just gonna watch for consistency. We may need to add a little bit more oil, but we'll give it a try.
Okay.
Okay, here we go. Let's stop that for a second and check our consistency.
Yeah.
And what do you think, Bonnie? You think we should add a little bit more oil?
You know, I would do a little more.
Okay.
The other thing is when you store pesto, you usually put a film of olive oil on top of
Yep.
it to, I don't know, keep it from ever drying out or.
Sure.
Not that it would ever last that long in my house.
So let's add maybe a little bit more. We'll pour a little in
I
here.
want to mention too, so now I'm living with a wonderful young woman who doesn't like tomatoes.
Oh.
So having pesto is a really nice alternative for spaghetti sauce or,
Yes.
instead of a tomato-based sauce.
Definitely,
we have
definitely.
something else.
All right, here, a little more oil. All right, right, so I think
Looks good.
I added about 3/4 cup altogether, probably of olive oil.
Right.
All right, so Bonnie, you approve of the texture?
Yeah, it looks wonderful, and doesn't it
Does that
smell
look right?
good?
Oh my gosh,
All right,
yes.
we've
Wish
got,
our TV audience could have this smell.
all right, so that is simply all you need to do, right? We miss anything? I think we got everything in there. And what I'm gonna do then, Junita, if you would take the honor of stirring up this
Okay.
for us. I'm just gonna drizzle
Let me hold
that.
that?
Yeah, thank you. That's great. And then I'll,
I noticed we didn't cook anything, so for the raw food people out there.
yeah, plug for the raw food.
And it's so easy. People think sometimes from scratch cooking is difficult. This is
Yeah.
so easy.
Isn't this
Yeah.
simple?
I wanted to mention too that I think, if I have this right, the word pesto in Italian means pound.
Oh, is that
So
right?
traditionally, it's
Oh.
made by just pounding it in a mortar. And
Of course.
The leaves are so,
Sure.
I don't know what the word is, but they turn into the mushy,
Uh-huh.
wonderful stuff just by hand, but it is a little more work than having a chopper, so.
Now, almond really gives food like a nice texture, maybe almost a meat texture. For someone who wanted to add meat to this, could they do that? Could they add chicken
Sure.
or?
Oh, sure. Or a lot of people, let's say you're gonna have a breast of chicken that you roast or fry or whatever, you can put pesto on top of it.
Okay.
And then either cook it with the pesto on or add the pesto at the end.
Okay.
We were saying before, I think it serves a function sort of like chutney in Indian cooking.
Yes, yeah.
Where it's a garnish, it's
Yep.
something that
A
enhances
sauce.
whatever you do it.
Same
do
kind
with
of
it.
idea, right?
Yeah, I think so.
So what do you think? I think that if you notice, we slowly poured it over there. We still have some left here, but does that look like it's well coated and looks good to
I
me?
think
It's really
so.
good to me. When
Yeah.
do we get to taste
Well,
it?
then we're gonna taste it after we add a little bit more
Oh,
of this
good
good
idea.
stuff on top. And then we
Wow,
are
talk
ready
about
to
your
taste.
summer lunch.
Yes.
10 feet from my door.
And a little bit goes a long way because there's still a lot more left. You could feed a couple more people.
Or throw it in the freezer. I mean, there's nothing in December or January or February like that
Oh.
bright green. It stays bright green in the freezer.
What a great
And the
idea.
smell and everything is still there, you
Can I
know?
pass this out to you to start
Okay.
tasting? Let's see
Good.
what we
Got
created
my
here.
fork ready.
And of course, you just
Get this out of
adjust
the
your
way.
salt and pepper after you give it a taste. So simple, so easy. You can also add like fresh spinach to this, ton of different things. Throw in cherry tomatoes if you like tomatoes.
I know, what's wrong with her? She doesn't like tomatoes, but
Fork. All right, what do you think? Did we do it okay?
I
Did we
think it
do it
tastes
right?
wonderful.
That is
Like
fabulous.
it?
Nice. Really fresh flavors. The garlic is
Go,
coming
Alli.
through, right?
And this tastes nothing like it's nothing like garlic or basil from your garden. I mean, the flavor
Right.
is just so full.
Intense without
Yes.
being offensive,
Right,
you know?
right.
Right. Well, thank you for bringing us your bounty from your
Oh,
garden. and
thank
this was just
you.
a ton of fun, and
You
especially
did.
because it came from you.
Excellent follow-through.
Thank you. And we thank you for joining us today on It's a Woman's World, and we hope to see you next time. Well,